Hey, welcome back, guys. Today I thought I'd do that XFCE theming video that I promised. Now, we're going to cover a lot of ground. I'm going to try to do it in an organized manner. And this is the format that I'm going to follow. First of all, theming the XFCE desktop within Linux. The same concepts that I illustrate should work in Ubuntu, which is where I am. I'm in Ubuntu 1804, the beta or the alpha. Linux Mint, XFCE, Linux Lite, Debian with XFCE, any Debian derivative with XFCE. So if you're using Sparky with XFCE, or if you're using Emacs with XFCE, the same concepts should work. Arch Linux with XFCE, but you'd have to adjust for the different package management. And I'll leave that up to you. So we're going to follow this format. I'm going to talk about changing wallpapers, both default and downloading new ones. I'm going to talk about desktop icons, what you see right here. I'm going to talk about the Whisker menu, configuring the Whisker menu, and also changing the icon and adding a text label. I'm going to talk about the window manager, changing this top panel on open windows. I'm going to talk about theming notifications, those little pop-up windows letting you know that something's happening. I'm going to talk about window manager tweaks in order to center new windows. Then I'm going to talk about using a panel or a dock. I'm going to use the example, the default panel, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Plank, which is an application that creates a dock. Now I am going to go over briefly the XFCE panel switch application in your settings menu. That should be in most of the distributions that I mentioned. I'm going to talk about changing terminal fonts. I'm going to add a new terminal font. So just so you'll understand the process. I'm going to talk about adding a Conky to your desktop and doing a little bit of slight modification. I'm going to talk about clock formatting as it relates to the clock in your panel. I'm going to talk about themes and icons. So I'm going to basically cover three ways to add themes and icons. One is by installing deb files. Two would be installing via the terminal through the repo that you're using. And I'm also going to talk about installing themes and icons through Synaptic. We will install the Arc theme and Fienza icons just to give you an illustration of the concept. We're going to also, instead of installing by terminal or a Debian file, we're going to talk about extracting tar or zip files and adding them to a system folder, either your root folder, your themes and icons folder, or adding or creating theme and icons folders within your home directory. So we're going to cover a lot of ground, and I hope this is helpful to you. If you're a new Linux user or you're an existing Linux user, hopefully you'll get something out of this that you can learn and use to help you get your Linux desktop looking just the way you want it. Now, I was reading, just a little bit of a side note, I was reading that China now leads the United States in the use of supercomputers. And I also read that every supercomputer in the world now runs Linux. So keep in mind that you have at your fingertips the most powerful operating system on the planet. And yet when we look at it, we say, wow, it's very simple. and it is, but it's extremely powerful. So we're going to talk a little bit today about harnessing some of that um, ability to create a look that makes you comfortable and happy using your computer every day. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is wallpaper. Okay, with wallpaper, that's basically what you see right here. It is the illustration or the picture that you see when you turn on your computer. So in Ubuntu 18.04, this is the default. If I want to change it, all I need to do is right click the desktop and go to desktop settings. From that, you will see that there are lots of pictures that you can use and change to something that you might find a little more pleasing. So for example, if you want something that's kind of reminiscent of Mac OS, you click on that and you've got a similar to Mac wallpaper. Now, the style here on the default wallpapers, the resolution of the graphic is such that they have them all set up to be zoomed, and that gives you the best layout of the image. So for example, if I change that to centered, you see how that changes and you're losing part of the image. So whenever you add new pictures to use as a wallpaper, you might need to experiment with these and find the one that looks best to you. We're going to stay with zoomed because that's what Ubuntu chose for all of the default wallpapers. Now if you want to download something from the internet, I'm going to show you how to do that. You need to know your desktop resolution. So for example, I'm going to close that out and I am going to open up my browser. Now, what I usually search for is I will put high definition wallpaper and I will put the resolution of my monitor. So I have 1920 by 1080. Now, once I see that and I click on images for HD wallpaper, you can take Google's images, which usually brings up a pretty comprehensive list, or you can select one of these websites. Now, Wallpapers Wide is a good one, and you can take a look at these to see if there's any that float your boat. Now, I'm just going to go for the images, and I'm going to make sure I pick something that's 1920 by 1080 so it matches my desktop resolution. That way I don't have to manipulate the image. It'll look exactly the way it looks on the illustration here. Now you can see the desktop resolution. When I hover over the picture, it shows the desktop resolution, 1920 by 1080. Okay, so let's pick something that we think might be a nice wallpaper. Let's take a look at it. If I click on that, and then I click View Image, and original resolution 1920 by 1080, I'm going to change that to this one here to 1920 by 1080 and download in selected resolution. Now it's going to ask me, and I'm going to save it. Now saving that wallpaper should save it in my downloads folder. There's the image. Now what I'm going to do, the best place to put that would be if I cut it and paste it into my pictures folder, Okay, I'm going to paste that. Now, when I right click the desktop and go to desktop settings, it will allow me to change this backdrops folder to another folder, and I'm going to take pictures. Okay, so I'm going to go to my home folder, click on pictures. That's where the picture is. If you have multiples, then you'll have access to all of them. Then I'm going to click open, and you see that there. Now, as soon as I click on that, it's going to give me the image on my desktop, as you can see. Now, because I downloaded it in 1920 by 1080, which matches the resolution of my desktop, I'm going to change that to centered. Now, it's not going to have much effect on that particular image, but centered would be the correct style to use. So let's close that out, and now you know how to download and change your wallpaper. Okay, the next topic on our list is desktop icons. If I right click and go to desktop settings, just briefly, I'm going to go through these menus. Include applications menu on desktop, right click. What that means is if I right click the desktop, you see down the bottom it shows applications? You can take that off. You don't have to do that. So if I uncheck that, that last applications on the menu will disappear. Show window list menu on desktop, middle click. If I use my mouse wheel and middle click, you can see that it shows my open windows, which is useful if you want to just pop to an open window. If I want to look at my open document, so if I minimize that, click the wheel, I can bring that up. So some useful configuration options here. Now let's take a look at icons. The icon size on the desktop defaults in Ubuntu to 48. You can change that to anything you want. I usually change it to 42 and I make them a little bit smaller. Now the tooltip size, if you watch when I hover over the icon, you see that tooltip? I can change that. So if I want to see something larger, I can go up, and if I want to see something smaller, I can go down. It's entirely up to you. Now, when you install Ubuntu, removable devices are on the desktop by default. But as you can see, I have so many removable devices in my computer, I don't really want to look at that. So I usually uncheck that. But you can also uncheck any of these. As you can see, when I check them, they either appear or they disappear. If you don't want any on your desktop and you prefer to put those in your panel or in a dock, then you can do that. You can get rid of those. I'm going to leave them there for the time being. And that's how you adjust some of your desktop settings. Okay, our next topic is the Whisker Menu. Now, in Ubuntu, and more than likely in anything that you're using with XFCE, you've got a little icon. That's the standard XFCE icon. But if you want to modify that, let me show you how to do that. Right click and go to Properties. Now that brings up the properties of your Whisker menu. So what you can do, if you want to display just an icon, well, that's what I have right now. But if I want to put in a text, so if I want to show this title, I just click that and go to Icon and Title. You see how it added the words Application Menu? I can also modify that. So if I click in that and I back up, you can see I only have menu. Now whenever I put any kind of label in the title, I usually put a space first. It just looks better on the panel. So I usually put a space first and after, just to put a little separation. Now, you can also put start. Now, and you can also put a new icon. Now, let me show you how to do the icon. Let's say you want to put a new Ubuntu icon. I'm going to leave that just the way it is and close that out. Now let's go to our browser. And what you're going to do is, just for an example, I'm going to put Ubuntu icon, and I always put transparent background because I don't want anything but the icon showing. So now I've got images for Ubuntu icon with a transparent background. Now you can tell which icons have a transparent background. Pick the one you like. Okay, so this icon has a transparent background, and you can tell that because you see the little white and gray shading around it. That means that shading is not going to show. So if I click View Image and I right click Save Image As, and I put that in my Pictures folder, and save it. Now I'm going to close my browser. I'm going to right click the icon for properties on Whisker Menu. I'm going to click the icon. Now when I click the icon, it's going to bring up a lot of different icons, and you could use any one of these, but I want to use the one that I saved in my Pictures folder. So you're going to come down and you're going to take a look at image files. Now make sure you click on image files. Now I've got my Pictures folder. There's my icon. I'm going to click OK. Now you see the icon has now appeared in my Start button. And I've got Start, but again I can change that text to anything that I want. Now the Whisker menu, what I usually do, you can change the icons, and I'll show you that in a moment. But let's take a look at behavior of the Whisker menu. I usually put switch categories by hovering, position the categories next to the panel button, and display favorites by default. So if I close that, you'll see now I have the categories moved to the left. I've got the search up the top, but the buttons down the bottom. You can move that around with your configuration. Just change the options. Now you can also change the size of the icons. So if I right click and go back to properties, you see smaller and very small. Well, let's say I change small and small. And now the icons have gotten bigger, and now I might want to open up the menu a little bit. So it's a personal preference. You can now, as the icons have grown bigger, you'll need to scroll if you don't enlarge it big enough to absorb all of the icons. So that's the configuration that I usually leave it at. And basically that is how you can configure your Whisker menu. Now I'm going to show you one more option, and I'm going to need to go into one of my, it's a USB drive. You see this start button? I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to copy it to my pictures folder. Okay, there we go. Now, this will give you an example of the extreme that you can go to. Let's say I only want to do the icon, but I want to change the icon to my start button. And that is how you can just put a start button. So as you can see, you can pretty much do whatever you want. You just need to know how to do it. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic. Okay, so now we're going to talk about changing the top panel on Windows. So if I go to my settings, Window Manager, you're going to this gives you a lot of different options. The only one I'm going to check is I'm going to change this top panel. So if I go down and I take a look at Numix, you see how it changed to black? There's the default, which is Graybird. There's Cocody, Mohili, Deloa. Different sizes of the default. And I'm going to leave the Numix theme. Now, many times when you change to a new theme, it will not change the Window Manager panel up top. So just remember, after you load up a new GTK theme, and we're going to get into that, go back to your Window Manager configuration and change that top panel if you want it to conform to the new theme that you've installed. And let's go on to the next topic. Okay, next topic is Window Manager tweaks. Now I use this for centering new windows. So if you go to Settings, Window Manager tweaks, I basically leave everything as default. However, a couple of things I might change. Placement. If I want to center all of every window that I open, what I found works the best, since you're working with a slider here, open up to large, leave at the center of the screen. Now that will usually mean that every window will open in the center. That's my personal preference, but again, you're going to set it up for the look and the feel that you want. Now for compositing, there's only one thing I usually change, and that is opacity of windows during moving a window. Now I usually keep this display compositing enabled, but I go down to the windows during move and I move the slider down just slightly, and I'll show you what that does. You see the transparency of the window? Now I like that because sometimes I want to see what's behind it. So I can just click on the window and read my text file. The more I move that slider to the left, the more transparent it becomes. So that is a useful feature for me, and again, it's entirely up to you whether you want to use that. I'm just showing you the options that you have. Now for workspaces, you can use the mouse wheel to switch workspaces. I do not. And I usually eliminate workspaces. I only use the one, but that's entirely up to you. Let's move on to the next topic. Okay, the next topic is theming notifications. So that is the settings menu, notifications. You can see that you've got different themes and different default positions. You can also adjust opacity. Now, you see this little button? It'll show you a preview. There it is. But you see the window that appeared momentarily? That's what, and it's a preview. It says this is what notifications will look like. So if I get rid of that, let's move this down a little bit so we can see that better. You see the preview? Now that's the default Graybird theme. If I want to use bright, you can see that the look has changed. If I want to use smoke, again, a different look. And if I want to go back to default, it's a little bit darker. So you can experiment and settle on the one that you like. You can set it for how many seconds you want it to show. So if you don't want it staying up there too long, you can bring it down to 3 seconds. You can click to fade out, and it will fade right out, as you can see. So you can show it on your primary display or the display with the mouse pointer. I usually leave it on primary, but again, I'm only using the one display. Now you can shut off notifications by sliding Do Not Disturb. And let's move on to the next topic. Okay, the next topic is changing terminal fonts. Now, if I open up a terminal, you can see that the default has a relatively small font. If you want to enlarge that, you're going to click on File, go to Edit, Preferences, Appearance, and then you can change the size of the font. Now right now it's on 9, and you can bump it up. And at 14, you can see what that does. It makes using the terminal a little bit more visible. Now if you don't like the font, so for example, that's what it would look like at 14 on the default font. Now there's really only one font that I switch to once in a while, and that's Inconsolata. Now Inconsolata is not available out of the box in this particular distribution. So if I want to install it, I have found that rather than use the software menu, which to be honest with you leaves a lot to be desired in my opinion for theming, as far as icons, themes, and fonts, I install Synaptic Package Manager. Now let me show you something. Synaptic is not in this distribution out of the box, but all you need to do is sudo apt install Synaptic. Now I did that already, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on search, and I'm going to search for Inconsolata. You see fonts Inconsolata. I'm going to mark that for installation, and then I'm going to click apply. You can see that to be installed fonts Inconsolata and everything else is unchanged. So I'm going to click apply, and the changes have been applied. I should have, if I open a terminal, Inconsolata should be available to me as a font. So if I click on that, you can see Inconsolata is available, and that's what it looks like. So if I go on 14 in the bold and I select it, I now get a little bit different look. So it depends on what you like. If you like the default font, just leave it. If you want to try something new in the terminal, Inconsolata is a decent terminal font. So let's move on to the next topic. Okay, now we're going to talk about formatting the clock. If I right click, you can see it says clock up top. Yeah, I want to go to properties. Okay, now the format of the clock is based upon standard Linux time formatting. What I usually use, if I go to my Documents folder and I look at Linux time format, you'll see I have a list of all of the options. But the one that I use is this one here. So if I copy that and I paste it using custom format, watch the change in the panel. Now I've got Thursday, November 16th, 4:19 p.m. That's the way I usually leave it. I'm going to close that out, and that is how you change the format on your panel clock. Now if you want all of this information, it's readily available online. Just do a search for Linux time formats and you'll be able to get all of this information. Let's move on to the next topic. Okay, the next topic is using a panel or the dock. Now, if I go to XFCE panel switch, you can see that I have the current configuration, and if I want to keep it exactly the way it is, I can save the configuration. You see this little icon? And that's going to say backup and the date and time. I'm going to save it. You see it's up there. Now, I can try some of the variations here. So if I go to GNOME and I click apply the configuration, you see what's happened? I now have a different look, and I've got a bottom panel, so that gives you a typical GNOME look. If I click on apply Redmond, that is a typical Windows type look, and that's what it's trying to replicate. Now I've got XFCE 4.12, click apply. You can see it's given me a panel up the top, and it's given me a little dock at the bottom, and that's basically a second panel. So if I go to panel and panel preferences, you can see I now have two panels, one at the top, one at the bottom. If I go to Ubuntu Classic, you can see that I've got a transparent panel at the bottom that's set to disappear automatically. See it? It only comes back when I bring my mouse pointer down there. And then I've got Ubuntu Modern, and that's basically back to what I had before, almost. I'm going to go back to backup, click apply, and now that's what I had before. So that's what you have as with XFCE panel switch. That's what you have available to you. Now if you don't have XFCE panel switch, you can create any of these looks yourself. So if I close that and I close my settings menu, if I want to create a dock, and I'm going to show you what I have found to be the best for me. I can't cover every possible configuration or every possible option, but I'm going to show you what I have found to be the most useful and aesthetically pleasing. Now, it's going to involve installing Plank. So I am going to install a dock application called Plank. Okay, yes. Now, you will see that I have Plank in my menu under accessories normally, right there. Okay, now that's the default look. That's what I usually leave. But if you hover your mouse pointer and you press your control key on your keyboard and right click, and then you'll see preferences. Now that will give you some configuration options on your Plank dock. You can set the icon size. You can set your icon zoom. By default it's off, but if I turn it on, you can see the zoom. You can align center, end, start, fill. You can use themes. There's a few that came with it. I use the default, but you can do transparent, matte, GTK, default. I usually leave it on default, nice and clean. It looks sharp no matter what type of desktop configuration you're using. You can move it to the right. You can move it to the left, and you can move it to top and to bottom. I'm going to go back to the bottom. For behavior, you can IntelliHide, so you can see when I move a window down, it automatically pops out of the way. You don't need to put it like that. You can auto hide it. You can turn off IntelliHide, so now it will not disappear. It's entirely up to you. There are docklets that you can add to your Plank. So if I want to add my trash can, I can do that. Desktop, clock, CPU monitor. You can do pretty much anything you want with that. Now you'll notice Parole Media Player is listed twice. Well, this is just a basic default configuration. If, for example, I want to put LeafPad. Now you can see LeafPad is open. It shows down here. If I right click it and check off Keep in Dock, it will stay there. Now GUVC View will, if once I close it out, it's going to disappear from the dock. So whenever you open up an application, if you want it to stay in the dock, check off Keep in Dock. So that is your Plank dock. One of the things that you'll need to do to make sure that Plank loads every time you reboot your machine is go to your settings, go to Session and Startup, Application Auto Start, and make sure Plank is listed there. Now you can see Plank is not listed. So what you're going to do is click Add, give it a name, and the command is simply Plank. And that will start it every time you reboot your machine. And you can see that down the bottom. Now we're going to go over a couple more things on this panel. If you go into your Whisker menu and you right click any of the applications, you'll see that it gives you the option to add to your favorites, add it to the desktop, or add it to the panel. Okay, let's go add to favorites. You can see it's now in my favorites. Let's go add to desktop. You can see it's now on my desktop. If you want to change this label, right click, go to Properties, and you can change the label. And it'll just say Firefox. And let's go one more. Let's right click and add to panel. Now you'll see that it added it to the right side of the panel. That's not always the best place to put it. So what we're going to do is we're going to hover our mouse over the panel, right click, go to panel preferences, go to items, and you can see it added a launcher at the bottom. What we're going to do is we're going to use these arrow keys to position it where we want. So if you watch now, I can move it. You see how it's moving along the panel until I get it where I want it, right to the right of my start button. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Now if I want to add another application, let's say I want to add the terminal, add it to the panel. You see it's back on the right hand side. There's the launcher, and I want to use my arrows to get it up the top on the left hand side. And you can do that with as many applications as you want. So that gives you single click application access, and theoretically this panel would be all you need. You wouldn't even need the plank dock. Okay, so let's go to, now one more thing. If I right click and go to panel preferences and I go to appearance, you can change the opacity using the alpha, enter, and leave on opacity. You can, I always recommend locking the panel. You can change the height of the panel. So if I want to go a little bit higher, now it's 34. And I can dial that down a little bit. And if I might say 28 is a good medium. Length 100% and automatically increase the length. That's what you'll leave that there when you're using that type of default panel. I'm going to close that out and let's move on to the next topic. Okay, the next topic is Conky. Now you can do Conky's a few different ways. You can use Conky Manager by installing Conky Manager, and that will bring various Conkys available, make them available to you, and it's easy to switch back and forth. I tend to use just one particular Conky that has what I need on it, and it's a manual process. Let me show you how to do the manual process. And the first thing we want to do is open up a terminal and install Conky. Okay, so Conky was already installed, and let me show you. In my home folder, you need to have show hidden files checked. You can see down here that I've already put a Conky file in there. Now the Conky file is there. I've got the Conky application installed. If I want to start my Conky every time I start my computer, then I need to put that in auto start. So I'm going to go to settings, session and startup, and Conky. Now if I want to show you, if you want to delay the Conky for about 10 seconds when you start your machine to let everything else load, and then load the Conky 10 seconds in, this is the command you'll use. Conky space dash small p space 10. You can change the amount of time, the delay. You can put 10, 15, you can shorten it to 5. So you're going to make sure you have that in there, and that way your Conky will start every time you reboot your machine. Now I don't want to reboot the machine right now, so I'm going to see if I can start the Conky just with a command. Okay, so you can see the Conky is now in the center of my screen. If I close this terminal window, my Conky will disappear, so I'm not going to do that. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the file and just give you a couple of configuration options. So if I open that with LeafPad, you can see that in the configuration the default color is navy. Well, that's a little bit dark with this desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to white. And I have to save the file. It's going to refresh, and now I've got that as white. So I've got the main body of the Conky as white. I've got the date in red, and I've got the data, my hard drive usage, my RAM usage, and my CPU temperature and usage in light blue. And that actually works fine. Now the only thing I might want to do, depending on the wallpaper that I'm using, is move it around. And that's going to be done by these gaps. You've got an X coordinate gap and a Y coordinate gap. So I changed these to get this centering up the top. But if I want to move it, for example, let me show you. If I go to 300 and I save that, you can see how it moved it down. And if I go back to 100 and I save that, it's going to go back up. So I'm going to leave that right where it is, but that gives you an idea of what you can do with Conkys. Now you can go on the internet and download Conky files. Just make sure that you're downloading. You have to be careful with Conky files because some of the older Conky files don't work with the GTK desktops of today. So you just need to make sure that the format for 2017 is being followed. If you want a copy of this Conky, let me know. Just put a note, and I'll copy it to my GitHub folder, and you'll have access to it. But that's how you can enable Conkys on your desktop. And let's move on to the themes and icons topic. Okay, so when we're talking about theming, themes and icons, there are basically three ways of getting those into your system. One is if you find a Debian file and you're using either a Debian distribution or an Ubuntu-based distribution, you can install it using a Debian file. I'm going to show you that. I have in my downloads folder, I have a Bluebird theme Debian file. Now I do not currently have Bluebird. If I go under appearance, you can see I have Graybird but not Bluebird. So I am going to use the Debian file. Now, the first thing I have to do, the best thing is to, in my opinion, and I'm going to open up another terminal, and I'm going to install gdebi. Gdebi allows you to install deb files. So it's gdebi. And that will just take a moment to install. Now if I right click the deb file, open with another application, gdebi package installer is listed there, and I'm going to say open. gdebi will open. It says the same version is available in a software channel. So what that's saying is I could have installed through the terminal. And it was called Bluebird GTK theme. Okay, so now it is installed. Now sometimes you have to log out, log in order to see new themes. So keep that in mind. Um, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to see it, but I'm hoping. Okay, so it's here. Now, as I said, sometimes you will have to log out and log back in to see a new theme that you've installed to show it on your list. So let's access Bluebird. Now you can see that lots of things have actually changed. From Graybird, you can see even the labeling on my desktop icons. On Graybird, it's nice and clean, but on Bluebird, it gives me a little wider label. If you don't like that, then you can go back to Graybird. Again, everything is based on what you prefer. Now, that's how you can add a theme using the terminal, or if GDebi is working fine, you can add it using a Debian file. Let's take a look at Numix. If you remember, I changed my top panel in my window to the Numix. Since that theme is already installed, you can access it. It is a nice theme, no problem at all. It's already available, so let's go ahead and use it. Now, I showed you one way of adding a theme. Let's go over a couple more. Okay, so in my downloads folder, you can see I have a Numix Blue tar file and a zip file. Excuse me. I'm going to right click and I'm going to extract here. And you can see it gave me a folder, Numix Blue Remix. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this just because I want to see what's going on. Extract here. Okay, so it gave me a Numix Blue master, and it's got GTK2, GTK3, Metacity, OpenBox. So it's got a variety of Numix Blue themes in the master file, and it seems to have the same in the standard file. So we're going to use that one. Now, there are technically two ways of getting that folder to the right place. The first is if you go to your home folder and you've got hidden files enabled, you're going to right click, create a folder, and you're going to call it .themes. Make sure you put the period at the beginning. Create. Okay, so since it's in your home folder, you don't need any root permissions. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Downloads. We're going to right click that folder for Numix Blue. We're going to copy it, and then we're going to go back to our home folder, find that .themes file that we created, which should be right here, and we're going to paste that in. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to show in themes yet. I might have to log in. So let's take a look. It is there. So you can see I now have Numix Blue Remix. And basically what it does is it changes the highlight from an orange to a blue. Some people like it. It also makes the panel a little bit darker. You see that? And changes the spacing slightly. So that's how you can add a theme to your home folder. And it will be using that .themes format for your folder. And again, you'll have to have hidden files enabled. That will make that folder, make that theme show in your appearance menu. Now the other way, and I'm not going to really review it with you, but the other way would be if, and I've seen where this method does not work. So if for some reason that doesn't work for you, even after logging out and logging in, you can always go to the root folder. You'll have to have root permissions, and basically it's going to be user, share, and themes. Right there. That's where all the default themes are located, as you can see. So you can add a folder to that folder if you want to keep them all in one place. But the easiest way to do it, considering permissions, is to put it into your home folder, enabling hidden files and using the .themes folder. Now, let's go on to icons. You can install icons the same way. You can go to, let's open up a different terminal. Let's say, and Fienza icons are usually a good choice for a clean, very nice looking icon for any desktop. So if I say sudo apt install Fienza-icon-theme, that's available in the repos. So you can see that it's installing, and that shouldn't take too long. And once that's done, it's going to put the Fienza icons into your master icon folder. So that will be in your root folder, user, share, icons. And let's take a look at that, because that's where we should see that right now. And you can see Fienza and a few variations are available there. Now, if I go into my my icons changed slightly. If I go into my menu, appearance, and I go to icons, you will see Fienza. Now, Fienza Ambiance is the one I usually use, and that one usually works very well with the dark panel. No problems, configuration, everything looks nice and clean. You can see that there. That was installed in the terminal. You can also, I'm going to leave that on there. If I go to Style, in the Numix Blue, you see how my Whisker menu has changed? Let's go back to the Numix theme, and you can see it's back to normal. So that Numix Blue theme is actually changing my Whisker menu. Now, if you want to move this search bar, right-click, Properties, Behavior, and uncheck Position Search Entry next to Panel button. Close it out, and now it's down at the bottom. Right there. You can see it's right above. Now, I do not like this look of the Whisker menu, so I'm going to go back to the Numix theme, and you can see everything is back to normal. Now, there is one other way of installing icons and themes I want to go over with you, Synaptic. And again, for icons and themes, this works better than the software store. This software does, I don't like it for theming. It works pretty good on these standard applications, but for theming files, not so much. So if I search for themes, you can see there are a bunch of themes that come up. You've got the Arc theme, Black Box, Blackbird. And so if you want a different theme, for example, if you want the Arc theme, which is a nice theme, you can mark that for installation, click Apply, click Apply again. It's going to install the Arc theme. And we'll take a quick look at that. Under Appearance, and you can see that there are three themes added. Arc Dark. Now that is a dark theme. It's a nice dark theme. Of the Arc family, I usually like Arc Darker. And so if I leave that alone, my Whisker menu still looks good. And I'm going to leave that just the way it is. Now in my icons, I prefer the Fienza icons. Let's see in Synaptic what we have for icons. Okay, so you can go through and take a look at, there's Breeze icons, and Fienza you can see is installed. Now you can also download and install icons from the internet. So just do a search on Ubuntu XFCE icons. It'll bring up websites where you can actually download the files. You can extract them the same way that I did, and then place them in your home folder. And you remember I created the themes folder right there. You would also create an icons folder. Create folder and call it .icons. And that's where you would put any icons that you download and extract. You're going to put the icon folder right in the icon folder in your home directory. So guys, that is it for this theming video. I hope you enjoyed it. I apologize for the length of it, but there really isn't any way to shortcut too much of this stuff. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section, and I hope that if you're a new Linux user, I hope that this video will help you enjoy Linux, because Linux is a terrific operating system, and as I mentioned, extremely powerful. So it'll do pretty much anything you want it to do. The only limitation is really how much you want to get into it. So guys, thanks for stopping by the channel today. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you soon. Take care.